Welcome to Athletes, Entrepreneurs, and Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources in career and finance and health. More importantly, this podcast is all about athletes' transition out of sport. It's such a major issue today with financial literacy and mental health. And we interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their transition out of sport, ultimately into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. And the whole idea is to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. So excited today to tap into the world of Arizona State, and we have Ryan Whiting. How you doing, Ryan?
Thanks for having me here.
It's a pleasure. So Ryan was a track and field star at ASU. He did shot put and discus. Ultimately, he's a six-time NCAA champion, two-time world champion. He was an Olympian in 2012. So he's got a pretty impressive resume, and now he's coaching. He's in coach at Arizona State, working with the throwers there. And he also had a business that he has a coaching business, Desert Hot Performance. And then a little bit later on, he's going to tell us about a new exciting endeavor into entrepreneurship, which kind of fits the whole role of athlete. So Ryan, I always like to talk about playing sports growing up. How did that shape you leading up into college?
I kind of had the traditional. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, so we were not a small town. It was adjacent to Harrisburg, actually. So we had a decent population. Started with baseball, went into soccer. I went through that whole journey, and it was just kind of learning who I was. I guess is kind of how I look at it now. I'm watching my son play now, and it's kind of it's more formative than you give it credit for when it's happening. But I still remember those moments at my first home run. Just got to see my son do the same thing. And you kind of look back on those moments, you're like, I didn't realize, I can't remember what I had to eat last week, but I can certainly remember that. So it definitely impacts you later in life. And I think I'm enjoying my son's journey a lot more than I thought I would. I'm just going to sit back and letting him cruise. But some of the pressure of it that some of these parents put on the kids is a little rough. I never felt that from my parents. They let me develop in kind of whatever direction I wanted. I was always throwing things really hard, so that dovetailed me straight into the throwing world. But got into football for a little bit, first couple of years of high school, and I've been through a little bit of everything.
That's now. Did you have that dream of being a professional athlete? And if so, like what sport?
Yeah, actually, it was. I found this what was it? It was like an art project I did for my class in maybe fifth grade, and it was me wanting to be in the World Cup for soccer. Actually, I was a goalie. I could punt the ball a mile. I just kind of could make things move when I was younger. So that was my original plan, some World Cup and going professional in soccer. I got a little bigger, so that didn't pan out quite exactly right. Fit the other sports a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, if you're punting the ball like that you could have signed on for like the NFL or something like that, right? Could have been a kicker or a punter.
Yeah, I was a punter in high school for the football team and punter and left tackle, so it was kind of a weird combo, but yeah.
It is an interesting mix. Like, so you got this big dude on the offensive line, and then all of a sudden, like, hey, isn't that the guy there? Now he's punting.
Yeah, punter was
That's
number
cool.
73. It's an odd one.
Yeah, for sure. I always dreamed about being a Major League Baseball player, but unfortunately, talent wasn't there. So now I do podcasts and entrepreneurial stuff. Yeah. So let's go. Let's kind of fast forward now and talk going to college. So we talk about ultimately transition out of sport, and you've kind of had a couple per se with both college and being an Olympian. But when you were at Arizona State, was there any kind of education on transition out of sport? Beyond that one day workshop type thing.
Honestly, I wouldn't say so. They've had a lot more classes now than I had when I was in school. I was lucky to have mentors just from our alumni base, and my dad was a pretty successful business person, so he helped me kind of organize my money a little bit and understand I had to pay taxes coming out of college. And I had some pretty good mentors in that front. But from within the university, I felt very supported as an athlete myself, getting through the college process. I was a good student, so they didn't have a whole lot of worries there for me. There's a lot of academic support. There was not a ton of career support. And maybe that was because I was getting ready to go into a professional career in athletics that I just was a little blind to it. I see it now, on that coaching side. But when I was there, I don't think that was as prevalent. I think they really needed a lot of it with what's going on with NIL. Understanding that a lot of money you're making does need to be earmarked for taxes. A lot of it's 1099 revenue, so they have some advisors here now. But when I was coming out, I did more stuff within the actual School of Engineering programs than I did within the athletic department. I think they provided a little bit more support, and I was in the alumni, or what's it called? honors fraternity for civil engineering. So I got a lot of support through them. And I got a pretty good internship my senior year with Gannett Fleming, working on a SkyTrain here in Phoenix. But I don't think that I can recognize now, look back and say, I felt like they pointed me in the right direction career-wise if I were to go into just a professional career rather than professional athletic.
And like you mentioned that, since you are on the coaching staff, aside from like the NIL piece and the financial literacy, are there other pieces of education now within the athletic department that they're kind of pushing on the athletes more to get involved with?
Yeah, we have quite a few more than when I was in school. We have pretty much at least monthly workshops that the kids can go and learn a little bit more specifically about what the taxes are going to look like, how to connect with alumni and professional career people to kind of go into the careers because the vast majority of the athletes going into the athletic department are not going to be professional athletes. So I think they do a really good job now. I think they're usually weekly, and then they just have a professional come in and talk to the kids about name the topic basically. They announce them well ahead of time, and they usually have pretty good attendance. But it just depends on the week what our programs are going to look like. But they're pretty thorough now about actually offering it. Whether or not all the kids go is another thing.
Yeah, that's always the key too. They gotta want to do the education. It's a two-way
Yeah,
street, but it's
yeah,
it's good. It seems like Arizona State is definitely progressive. I mean, there's different schools. I think some are better than others when it comes to that thing, but it's so
absolutely.
important. And I think even beyond, like, I don't know if they have stuff for alumni athletes, any kind of curriculum.
We do have an alumni collective, kind of. You can get the alumni direct, kind of similar to your name there. It's not named exactly the same, but we do have a kind of social media group that you can kind of connect with people more directly. I'm barely getting involved with that. I'm doing a lot of outreach for ASU's track and field program, so I mostly connect to that, and I know a lot of the people that I competed with. That's how I stay in contact with them. It's more professional for me now than it is social. But they are starting to become a little bit more prevalent with more of the, I guess, social media savvy people graduating from school. Like right when I came through, Facebook was just becoming a thing. So I think with more people that are literate in those types of things, there's a little bit more connection than there was in the past. We do have quite a few alumni events that you can come to. Track and field, we're still developing. We're a pretty young program. Our head coach has been here a few years, but we're still kind of trying to figure out our alumni base and what that connection looks like. We're the biggest school in the country, so there are a ton of our alumni around the country. It's pretty easy to find them if you reach out. But there are some tools. I wish it was a little better. I know other schools do a little better. Like we go to Texas UT quite a bit, and they're really great at promoting their brand, making sure that their alumni stay connected and engaged. And I think there's going to be a lot of haves and have-nots, and a lot of the haves are going to have that alumni base that the kids can draw on for both professional advice and support, and then fundraising also.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting to see the schools that are more progressive with that and just kind of kicking into the whole alumni thing. When you like when you were going to school, was there a push to bring alumni back to mentor and again not just that one time event, but to work with the different athletes amongst the sports?
It was kind of difficult because they were considered boosters previously, and it
It's
was
true.
harder to engage. So there's a lot of compliance rules that were in the way there. So like our mutual friend Gary was one of my mentors, and he would come to our meets, and we'd be able to go out to dinner with him and talk to him about like kind of what the next steps look like. And he's been very helpful for me, and he was one of our track and field alumni. So connecting independently was pretty much the only way. You couldn't just reach out to a booster and say, "Hey, I need help with this," because compliance would look at it sideways,
Right.
and the coaching staff could get in trouble. So that's changed quite a bit. There is the ability to have a lot more direct contact between alumni and the athletes through the collective here, and it's just getting a little bit more normalized, which I think it should have been in the first place. NCAA is pretty power hungry.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's from a mentoring standpoint, it seems like it's been very and people I talk to, it seems like it's kind of siloed amongst the sports. I mean, is there any movement to kind of integrate more? So, like for you as an alumni athlete, not just maybe talking to the track and field folks, but also maybe talking to the football players or basketball players.
Yeah, I think the most popular alumni events are football games. So a lot of times they'll do like crossover at those games when they do host like an alumni dinner or something like that in the Santana Ford Club up here. Like That's just our kind of get together spot. And we'll meet people then. I'm lucky enough to be in the Hall of Fame here, so that was a really good networking experience. So I got to kind of cross pollinate when we went there. And every year going back to that, I think that's been the best thing for me to kind of get to know other alumni, other successful alumni. But that's a kind of privileged few that get to be at the top and go back to those lunches every year. I think you're right that it's pretty solid. I think you just kind of know your people and you stay in your lane. Track and field is one of the bigger sports, and typically just by the nature of the sport, you're pretty self-driven. So there's a lot of success business-wise across our sport in various areas, and I feel like I'm fortunate to be able to reach out to my friends to ask legal advice, professional advice, financial advice. Like there's professionals in kind of every category there that I can reach out that run the team with me, and I can just say, hey, I need a little bit of help. You willing to take 15 minutes? And usually that phone call is pretty easy, but I do wish there was a little bit more formal cross validation than there is right now.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, from an alumni perspective, I always encourage people, alumni want to help. I mean, tap into it. And I think you hear different stories. There's one podcast and the guy was talking about how he wishes he would have tapped into like different events when people came into town. And he told the story. I don't think it was him, but it was like somebody else he knew that was like sitting with, like say not Microsoft, but let's say like the president of Microsoft, like it wasn't Gates or anything, but just showing that you never know who you're there, and I think people need to tap into that, and I think alumni want to help. I mean, it's just a matter of the school engaging them, and it's a two-way street. Obviously, they want to come back, but back to the cross pollination. One school I was talking to recently, they are making a concerted effort to have the athletes kind of mentoring across the different sports and kind of bringing them together. I mean, I always talk about that athlete DNA, the skill set. I mean, you're all athletes and have a lot of the same things going on. So like, why not kind of work together?
Yeah. In my experience, everyone wants to help. It's just a matter of like reaching out and asking. Because also, I feel like just being on the engagement side with ASU track and field, it's a lot of the sentiment is yes, we want to help, we don't know how, and also sometimes we don't feel wanted because you guys aren't reaching out as much as we would like you to. So it's hard to kind of gauge the interest from the inside and feel interested in from the alumni side. I think a lot of it that is successful at ASU is alumni centered. Like it comes from the alumni rather than from the school, because we have a
Right.
lot of barriers to getting people together just because of protection of the athletes and compliance rules and various kind of professional barriers we have in place. I think those are starting to come down, and I think, like you
That's good.
said, it's getting a little more formalized. It's still not perfect.
Right, right, for sure. So let's talk about networking, connecting, and talk about the importance of doing it while you're still playing your sport.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. I tell my wife basically any country we want to go to because of the nature of track and field is pretty international. I'd spend 2 weeks in Asia, 3 months in Europe, sometimes Mexico, Canada, friends all over the place. And being within the athletic department at ASU was kind of a small version of that. They've all branched out and kind of gone across the country. While I was in my sport professionally, I met one of my business partners. She's from New Zealand, so he would fly me and my family to New Zealand as part of my appearance fee for down there, and I developed a connection with him. We started a business called Wall Shot and put out a tangible weight shot put. Kind of started selling those. I stepped out of that business a little while ago, but I can now pretty much reach out to someone in any country in Europe and a few countries all around the world and say, hey, can we stay for a week? And a lot of times it's nice to just be able to have a comfortable place to know you have a friend, or if you're trying to get in now. Recruiting for me has become a little bit more serious, and I have all those friends all over there that are moving up into coaching roles. So it's really easy to get someone in Croatia on the phone and say, hey, you got any young kids that feel like coming to the U.S. for track and field? So it is very important to be friendly with those people. And don't burn any bridges, I think is my biggest piece of advice is you can be competitors when you're actually competing against each other, but a lot of times the best times I've had is just sitting down for a meal and a beer afterwards and finding out who people are.
No, that's great. And so a lot of these athletes are from different countries, so you're just meeting them on the international stage.
Yeah, my best friend's from New Zealand. We've been there quite a few times. My wife got to come. It's just a really good, really cool life experience, knowing that kind of everyone's a little bit more similar than the political world likes to frame it. Going to Africa, going to Asia, people are people. I think if you go out and kind of explore with an open mind, you come back with some good experience.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Excuse me. So like, let's kind of flip back for a second on the alumni. Is there a kind of like an alumni um, group for former professional track athletes and Olympians, like a camaraderie going there?
Yeah, well, in the U.S., there definitely is. It's USATF, and there's a lot of kind of turnover. You come from the various different schools across the country. I came from ASU. I knew a couple other athletes that came after me from ASU, so you kind of bring them along as you go through the professional side of things. Um, there's not a formal like welcome to the professional world, nothing like that. But once you do make your first like national team, like you go to a world championship or an Olympic Games, you're automatically kind of part of that family, and that becomes your kind of networking base, I guess. So now I can reach
Okay.
out. A lot of my friends were former professional athletes that are now in the coaching space or branched off into other things, whether high school, college, or professional. And it makes it really easy for me to call and ask about a recruit, call and ask someone whose opinion I trust rather than just a stranger on the phone trying to get me to give their kid money for coming to school. It did become, it's just a really tight knit unit of people because I think I was on 9 teams with USATF, and there's a core group of people that will make 5 or 6 teams in a row, and you really get to know each other really well. And then you kind of have the floaters that come in and out and make 1 or 2 teams, and the core group is pretty tight, so you get to know those people pretty well, and it's easy to. I mean, they're just kind of friends now rather than professional acquaintances.
And were they still like on that team? Is that just like an all U.S. team, or are there multiple teams in the U.S.?
So when you make a world championship team, you're going to be within the U.S. camp. So we either So my first team, we went to South Korea. We had a like kind of athlete village in the traditional sense, like you view as the Olympics, just for track and field. So you're in your own silo. The U.S. has its own building, but then your cafeteria and everything is mixing with all the other athletes. So it's pretty easy to start to get to know people, especially because prior to that, if you're good enough to get invited to the Diamond League, which is the professional series for track and field, you would start to get to know some of these people before you even go to world championships. Half of our season or more is before world championships. So you get to know some of these people ahead of time and you sit down and eat with them. You really do get a pretty good networking experience and figuring out their life experience and what they actually do or want to do for a living after sport. So it's kind of unique that you're in this kind of microcosm of we're all going to go on to do something else. Not all of us can do this forever. And you get to know each other kind of through that like mutual privilege and struggle, I guess.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And so you're with Team USA. So I mean, you're competing individually against these other countries, but it's all
Yeah.
part of the team. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
And then what the so a couple questions. I always ask the fun questions. I don't know if you got a chance to listen or watch any of the episodes. So if you
Yep.
did, you're
Yeah. Yeah.
prepared. If not, then so the first question is: so going back in time, 10 words or less, what advice would you give to freshman Ryan at Arizona State?
Let me have a second here. 10 words or less. Let's see. Honestly, I was pretty driven, so I think stay the course. You're going to be fine. I think I got pretty anxious sometimes that I wasn't on track to do what I was set out to do. And I think looking at it from the perspective that I'm at now, kind of watching my son go through, he's a pretty good baseball player. I think he's going to have a chance to be really good. My best advice to him is just like take it one step at a time. Just have confidence in the struggles that you have right now and get through them as best you can. Hindsight's 2020, so
Sure.
I liked now looking back at it, I liked every step of struggle because it made it feel a little bit more rewarding when you get to kind of that first NCAA championship. You then look around and you're like, well, what's next? I ended up doing that 5 more times, and without the that question in my head all the time, what's next? What's the next goal? I think I would have been wondering, or I would have been a little complacent. Like if I gave myself the advice, buy Apple stock or something like that, I could be rich, but I wouldn't have had the life experience that I did. Just confirmation of the goal, I think, would have been the biggest thing for me.
Okay, and then fast forward to senior Ryan.
Man, senior, let's see, jokingly, choose a different agent. I was pushed into a corner a little bit there just because of who I knew. I wish I would have went a little different direction there. Let's see. Professionally, I think my advice would be don't chase every day. Really focus on your goal rather than the money making side of track and field, because on a monetary basis, based on how many meets you do, and if you do a ton of meets, you can make a certain amount of money. I probably focus a little more early in my career on getting medals and titles and staying home a little bit more and letting myself train and develop into a little bit better athlete earlier. I think I would have won a world championship medal a couple of years earlier, just with a bit of advice. Not traveling an extra 6 times to Europe. I was pretty exhausted by the time I got to my first world championship. So I think that could meaningfully change the trajectory of my career. But other than that, I had a good time. I don't really have any regrets.
Well, and how does it work? You get for as a professional track athlete,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
So
get paid a
it's pretty,
salary or get paid by event or what's that?
it's changed a lot since I've been in. But my kind of path was going into my senior year, I was third in the world in the shot put. And my senior year, actually I qualified for a world championship team indoor, but that coincided with NCAA's, and I already had an obligation to ASU. So I had to forego my spot on Team USA to be able to go compete at the NCAA championship for my team. So I won that NCAA title. 2 days later would have been that world championship that I would have been able to compete at. You start getting, and it was a lot harder back then because you couldn't just directly talk to agents because of compliance rules. You can freely engage with agents now as long as you're on a registered list. So you kind of had to go through back channels a little bit to get to know these people that were going to handle your career. So we had a professional athlete that I trained with, and he was with this agent, and he recommended him. We kind of informally handshook, and he started talking to shoe companies, which is Nike, Adidas, Reebok, Asics, just the big ones. And at that time, I kind of understood that I was going to get some sort of contract before I graduated. We couldn't formally talk about anything because you're just not allowed to, compliance wise. But at NCAA's, I won both shot and disc my senior year. I got within 3 centimeters of the collegiate record outdoor for shot, and then I could start actually meeting these people. So it's a really quick transition from your last NCAA meet, at least then, to your first professional U.S. championship, which is about a month after NCAA's. And in that month, you try to get your shoe contract lined up. You try to make sure you're comfortable with your agent, sign that contract, and it's a lot happening really fast. That if you don't have good advice from someone who's done some sort of contract negotiation, you can really get pretty screwed terms wise. I was lucky. My dad looked over everything. He was comfortable with it, so I got sponsored by Nike coming out of college, which involves basically you sign a contract. I was lucky enough to have a salary, and then on top of that, there are a series of meets, and you get a kind of pay structure based on how you do in each meet, and then how far you throw in a year. My first contract didn't include any reductions, but as I got further in my career and they started expecting me to make teams, my second contract involved things like if you don't make Team USA, your contract is reduced by 20%. So those things can start to weigh on you a little differently as you see your competitive opportunity is not just an opportunity to make a team and go to the world championship, but if you do get injured, they don't care. You're just stuck at home and your salary's reduced. So there's a lot of pressure there, and that part of it was one of the most stressful parts for me professionally. I only got reduced at the end of my career. I made every team I was supposed to. The bonus side of that is if you do medal at a world championship, that world championship prize money typically rolls over into the rest of your contract term as a salary. So there's potential to make a lot of money if you're stringing together titles. But to do that, you really have to be on. And there's a lot of self-focus involved in track and field. You can't lean on your teammates or anything. And a lot of times I was just in my own head because it was a very one-person experience. And I feel a little guilty. I should have let my wife in a little bit more on some of the struggles I was having. But you don't know that until you go through it. You don't know how you're going to respond. So, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about transition out of sport, and it's something that you hear a lot of struggles, especially like with Olympic athletes. You know, and it's a big issue. You've trained your whole life, and sometimes it's for a short event. You were doing a lot of events, you know, as a professional athlete. But talk about your transition out from that after doing that, and now getting into your work life.
Yeah, so I made the decision, and at the end of my 2017 season with my wife, because we had, at that point, we had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, I believe is what it was. And I was traveling quite a bit. So part of my decision was wanting to be home with my family. And I've had a decent amount of like surgical setback. I had a bruise in my knee. I had meniscus surgery. I had a cyst that ruptured inside me when I was a 10. I had all kinds of this whole lot of things. And for you to really be successful in the sport that I was doing, you need to be in shape for 2 years straight to kind of get to the timing level and strength level that where you can really compete. So I was looking at the next year and looking to be in really good shape and looking to still have goals, but I didn't want to spend the next 3 years traveling and struggling and being away from my family where I could start transitioning. And we sat down and I was just tired of being away from my family more than anything. And we decided 2018 is going to be my last competitive year. And I went into it a little bit more free because of that decision, not on the fence. I just kind of drew a line in the sand. I was like, I'm going to get as much as I can out of this experience. So I did all the things that I knew I would enjoy. I went to New Zealand and hung out with my friend and competed with him on his home soil. We had a good little hunting trip, fishing trip, and on the backside of a winery, uh, one of his friend zones. I focused more on experience during that year, and I still went and made the indoor world championship team. Got seventh at world championships my last year, which I'd done better than that before. But going out, I never missed a world final. I was really proud of that. Every final or every meet I competed in on the world stage, I competed in the finals. And I started acknowledging a little bit more of my success rather than focusing on the next thing. I kind of took a step back and every meet I went to, I was like, how can I appreciate this in a little bit different way because I'm never going to get to do this again. This is a once in a lifetime thing. And I started looking at it a little more through the lens of that. And so I was really happy with my transition. My last meet was in Zurich in August of 2018. And then within a month, I started Desert High Performance, my coaching business. And I've been brainstorming that kind of through the whole summer and kind of deciding what I wanted to do. I thought about like the realtor thing. I thought about going into engineering, but ultimately, I don't think I ever saw myself sitting behind a desk as a full-time job. So I got pretty lucky. I met who's now a two-time world champion. Her name is Chase Ely, Chase Jackson. Now she's a shot putter. She was just transitioning coaches, and she approached me, and I started coaching her. She had immediate success. She won a national championship that first year, or yeah, indoor and outdoor that first year. And I switched her from there's two different techniques in shot put the glide technique, which is kind of like the straight line hop across the ring, and then rotation. And she was a glider to start with, and I was a rotational specialist. So we switched her technique, and then she won two national championships within that first year. And then from there, my group started to grow. I think because of my success pretty quickly in the coaching space, and just all of a sudden having all this interest and wanting to make a good living for my family, I brushed under the rug the mental side of how that transition was going for me until COVID hit, probably. I think that's when I kind of was forced to take a step back and look at how I was actually feeling about being done being quote unquote an athlete. I still trained. I'm still fairly strong as normal people go, but like my colleagues that actually compete professionally now, it makes me feel weak, which my body feels I'm about 50 pounds lighter than I was when I competed. I was about 320. I float in 260 to 270 range now. So life got easier, like sleeping wise. I still was away from home a decent amount, which I didn't anticipate with the coaching. Just being successful right away. I had to go to the national championships, the world championships. And I think until COVID happened, I didn't really process any of the mental side of what all that meant to me. And I definitely struggled a little bit with identity. I think it's really hard for, like you said, any Olympic athlete that goes through all this alone. Some of us make a lot of money. If you're top three in the world, you're going to make a really good living, like on the level of what people think of a professional athlete, low end. If you're like Allison Felix, you're making just as much money as a basketball player. I think a lot of us come out of it. Like I did pretty well for myself. I was able to straight out of college. I was able to do things that a lot of my friends weren't able to do right away. But then I had already started a career. So it was kind of, I was going through the professional transition they all got to go through 10 years before as a 34-year old. It was like I don't know if you call it a maturity gap, but they'd already dealt with the the bad bosses and the things like that that I just had no experience with because I was very autonomous. So I'm still kind of figuring out that transition. I still see myself a little bit as an athlete first. It's just hard to shake that identity. And I think anyone you talk to that set goals for that amount of time and kind of sharpen themselves to that amount of focus over those years is going to have a hard time letting go of that. And I think one of the best pieces of advice I heard, I honestly can't even remember who told me, but I think it was one of my mentors professionally. He basically said, you just got to let yourself do what makes you happy and not what people think you should be doing. Like, I was clearly very good at the sport and I got a lot of the questions, well, why don't you do it more? Like, why don't you want to continue? And at that point in my life, I'd won 2 world championships. I'd represented the country a bunch of times, traveled the world for free. And I got to live all those experiences. But a lot of the people that I was talking to were like, you have this gift. Why are you wasting it? And I felt guilty about that a lot. Other people's judgment of my career decision. And then when I kind of stepped back from the professional coaching a little bit, I felt the same kind of wave of, okay, spending time with my family is what I intended to do. And I'm getting to do that a lot more now. And a lot more intentional about if my son has a baseball game, I'm going to be at that baseball game, barring a professional trip. And I kind of drew a line in the sand when I interviewed at ASU, and I said, my family is my priority. You guys need to understand that. I will professionally provide more than my value if you just let me live my life. And they've been really good about that. I think that's something that I'm really proud of the last few years is I don't miss as many games. I really am very deliberately going towards the thing that I want to do. And that's being a better dad and being there for my wife.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's great that you, I guess, continued on that course. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I mean, just even, like you said, the loss of identity and just not knowing what to do. And you kind of have your priorities straight and looking at what you're doing. And, I can feel the same thing. I mean, I spend a lot of time with my son in sports and just really getting to enjoy it with him and, my daughter with acting and stuff like that. So it's so important. And maybe just a couple other quick words of advice to athletes transitioning out of sport.
I think just like the alumni piece of things, I think that there are people that have gone through it before you and there are people that have struggled with it. I am one of them. If you're listening to this and you're getting out of sports right now, you know where to find me on Instagram. I do answer messages. Just like you said, alumni want to help. Professional athletes that have gone through this transition genuinely are reachable and do want to give you advice on how hard it is actually going to be. I don't think you should just live in the dark, and I don't think you should wonder if what you're feeling is normal. I think it's really important to, just like in any other part of life, ask for help when you need it. And some people struggle with addiction or suicide or more serious things. I struggled with identity. I went up and down with some things like that emotionally, but nothing extremely serious. And I think I can articulate what I went through a lot better now than I could when I went through it. And I think my best piece of advice is just reach out. If you need it, I'm here. There's plenty of other people that are willing to help too, that have gone through it before you. If they've told you they wanted to help before, they're being honest. I think you just need to reach out to them.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, that's okay. I think so many people are out there that want to help, and I think you just don't be afraid to ask for the help and don't go through that. So, just real quick, now you got this entrepreneurial bug. I mean, you were doing it because you were coaching, had your own coaching business, and some other things. Just quickly talk about some of your future endeavors here at a high level.
Yeah, so one of them I've been working on for about 2 years now. It's a baseball related training device, and we're getting ready to patent here pretty soon. So I'm pretty excited about that. I can't say more because of IP patents and everything, but I'm excited about that. I'm also one of the Paralympians that I coached during my career. He was at Penn State training. I coached him. He's an amputee. He was in an IED attack, and he had 18 major surgeries. I had my whole surgical career. I have like a punch card, 9 surgeries now or something like that.
No, that's a lot.
I've talked to him a lot about kind of what we both went through in parallel. Him on the military side, me on the athletic side. We're putting together a podcast actually. Not clear on the name yet, but we want it to be relating people's pain experiences through stories. So I'll tell my story, he'll tell his story. I mean, instead of trying to compare pain, compare people's struggles, we're trying to relate through just sharing it. So that's another thing we're kind of working on and just trying to get back a little bit. And the biggest thing is, trying to create more space to really be there for my kids in a way that they deserve. It's a very short period of time in anyone's life raising kids, and I think I'm realizing having an 11 and a 9-year old now, and they were just, I swear to God, 2 and 4. It really does fly. Anyone who's told you that, it was just telling the truth. So yeah, I'm excited about the baseball project and potential podcast. We're still brainstorming, but I think that's gonna take off a little bit, and yeah, it should be fun.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, enjoy while you got. Like you said, it goes quick. I mean, I was coaching my son when he was 5, and he's turning 30 this year, so it goes quick. My
Crazy.
daughter, same thing. She's turning, or she already turned. Yeah, she's 33. So I'm like, wow, time flies. You know, then you get to start look at the future when you're my age. You get to look at then the grandkids, and then going back to the whole sports challenge. I got my grandson starting to play baseball, so that's cool. So how do people find you?
Not on formerly Twitter, Ryan Whiting USA on Instagram. I do have Facebook, but it's personal. As that product comes out, develop another Instagram and kind of website for that. Ryan Whiting USA on Instagram. And if you are struggling, just reach out. I'll be there. I answer all the messages.
That's great, and I appreciate that, people. And for us, you can find us at alumnidirect.com. The podcast is on our YouTube channel, as well as across all the different podcast networks. And just really encourage people to watch every week. I just say it's great advice from Ryan and all our other guests, and just I think we can make a difference and help people, and just want to get more people to watch and listen, and just hear these stories and know that they're not alone. That there's a new team out there for them. So again, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, Rob, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.